Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Interventions and Detentions. This is your host, Brad. And don't forget, you can check in with us every Friday morning at 8 o'clock, at least for a couple more weeks. We're going to be taking some time off over summer because, it is summer vacation for us educators, and we got to take some time off. So this episode will probably be winding down season 2. And it's going to be a good episode this week because we've talked detentions, we've talked interventions, but we've never really talked books. And when I say books, we're talking children's books. Reading is such an important thing for kids in schools today. And for me, coming from a primary building for the last 4 years, I get really excited now about literacy and books and reading. Like I said, it's the foundation at the primary level for grades K1, 2, going into third grade. It's actually become very high stakes here in Indiana because in grades 2 and 3, our students now take the iRead test, which is what I would say like a basic reading level that kids should be able to pass by the end of third grade. And you heard me say second grade. We're now giving it to second graders and giving them the opportunity to test out of that. If they pass that third grade test as a second grader, they're done with it and go on. However, the flip to that is if kids can't pass that by the end of third grade, then we talk retention and other interventions and things like that. So we do have some very high stakes when it comes to literacy here in Indiana, and we're working through that as educators. And it's, just one of those things that what goes around comes around. But before we jump into our guest today, I want to share just some background on me and my reading. One of my favorite childhood books was Go Dog Go. I loved a lot of the Dr. Seuss series. That was always one of my favorite ones that I even brought to my kids when they were little. I loved the Littles series. That was a great series of books. But probably one of my all-time favorite series was the Choose Your Own Adventure books. Those were the series that really hooked me and got me into reading as about a second, third grader, probably maybe fourth grade. I was never a big reader, but once I found something that I liked, that was my hook. And I think that's what's so important with kids today, maybe more so with boys. I think girls are kind of naturally readers. Boys, it gets a little harder sometimes. And now these days with technology and phones and tablets and things, it gets even harder to get kids engaged in books. Book fair was another great memory of mine from growing up. We still have book fairs today. Sometimes I get a little irritated with our scholastic book fairs because I feel like we're focusing more on the money aspect with all the trinkets and toys that come along with the book fair versus just the books. But that is what is so great about the program that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Book Blast, and I'm going to be introducing to you in just a minute Ben Kaplan, the CEO and founding father, I guess I'll say, of Books Are Fun, if I'm saying that right. The program Book Blast is just an easy way to put books in the hands of kids without all the flash and fare of like a book fair. So I'm not going to talk too much about it because I want Ben to talk about it. But Ben is on the other line. Ben, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here this week.
Brad, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Before we get into the Book Blast, tell us a little bit about yourself, Ben, and how you came to be the founder and CEO of Books Are Fun.
Out of necessity. What I mean by that is I was running a company called Collective Goods, and all of a sudden we were facing a global pandemic. That was a company that you probably recall, reps showing up and setting up a display of books in the teacher's lounge. That's how we were known then. And we were serving about 55,000 schools across the United States at the time. And when the pandemic hit, I started reaching out to educators that we had really good, long-standing relationships with just to see how we could show up to help. And every conversation I had, they all sounded the same. Everybody was concerned the kids were falling behind in reading. They were spending way too much time in front of screens and not enough time on the page reading books. And this one principal was just like, can you just help me get some books for my kids? And it was at that point the light bulb went off. And, we spun off another company called Books Are Fun. There is a long history around Books Are Fun and that brand, which I'm happy to get into, but it's a little bit off topic. Maybe we'll come back to it in a little bit. But this iteration of Books Are Fun essentially is just really narrowly focused on how do we get kids excited about reading and get them hooked on reading to become lifelong readers. So we were able to put a program together that frankly shouldn't be possible. Financially, it should make zero sense. But we had enough people that were just so passionate about it and saw how important this was, given the challenges that we were facing. We were able to get some communities to come together and really show up for the kids and put really high quality books into all the kids' hands at these schools. And when we took this great story back to the publishing world, they jumped on board en masse and really got behind this thing. And so it's really sort of this conspiracy between us, our fellow educators and the publishing world to put really high quality books into the hands of kids to build the next generation of readers.
That's awesome. And like I said, I can't say enough good things about this program. And I can even remember when I first came to Central Noble Primary 4 years ago, that's when I first got approached about Book Blast. And I can remember, I think somebody actually came in person, was talking to me about it. And I really remember saying, like, in my mind, this has got to be like a hoax, or this can't be true. This is too good to be true, and then I thought, okay, I'll bite, I'll dig in. And I had a couple phone calls and video conferences about Book Blast. And I was like, okay, this is legit. This is a great program. And I don't want to go into detail yet. I don't want to steal your thunder, but I'm a big proponent of it. And I tell all my colleagues and peers all the time, like, you've got to do this program for your kids. It's a great program. But let's learn a little bit more about Ben before we get into Book Blast. I shared a couple of my favorite memories about books and reading, but what was your favorite book growing up as a kid?
Well, I had different phases. I was always a reader as a kid. I was really fortunate. My parents were both really into reading. They read to me and my sister when we were growing up. So I have zero memories where there weren't books all around. And then, so I don't know, like, early on, like Wind in the Willows was definitely one of my favorite books growing up. It's one of my father's favorite books, and he definitely passed that enthusiasm down to me. And then as I started reading my own books, I was kind of I don't know, I guess you would call it a nerd in a way. I was really into Dungeons and Dragons, and there were these sort of Dungeons and Dragons offshoot books. And it's interesting. I'll actually go on a tangent here because this is one of the things that sort of inspires the magic of the Book Blast program. So I remember I was in like third grade, and I had some really good buddies who were in fourth and fifth grade, and they were reading these books called the Dragonlance Chronicles.
Yeah.
This is like in the early 90s. And these books were probably like a little beyond my reading level. But I wanted to be included in the conversation. I wanted to belong. And I would hear my older friends talking about these books. So, I made my parents drive me to the local bookstore, and I bought the first book in the series, and I was hooked. So those were definitely a favorite. And then I kind of went on to there's this author, his name's R.A. Salvatore, and he wrote, I guess they're referred to now as like the Drizzt Chronicles, but just really nerdy books. I was really into that stuff growing up.
That's awesome. If you could recommend one children's book to every family out there listening, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would probably say Charlotte's Web.
Okay.
Charlotte's Web is, it's like the rare book that works for both kids and adults at the same time. It's on the surface, it's sort of this like gentle farm story. But underneath it really has these amazing undertones about, friendship, loyalty, death, kindness. It's just a really profound story. I don't know anyone that's ever read that book and wasn't like deeply moved by, the underlying message there.
Exactly. When you said that title, it took me right back to my fourth grade class, Mrs. Steed, and she read that to us, like after recess. And it, like you said, it takes you, when you hear a title like that, it takes you back to where you first heard it, read it, and it's amazing the connections that it brings back. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's palpable, right?
It is. It is. Well, let's jump into Book Blast for a little bit here, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people listening this week that have no idea what Book Blast is. So what exactly is Books Are Fun Book Blast program?
It's It's actually pretty simple. There are a lot of misconceptions about it, but it's really a community-funded literacy program to get kids excited about reading and help grow home libraries. It's an all-inclusive program. So one of the cool things about it, and this was a non-negotiable for us when we went to the publishers and we were sort of crafting the program, we wanted to make sure that every time we show up at a school, every single kid goes home with new books. And so even the kids that don't participate in the program, even the kids who are unable to bring in any contributions from friends or family, they still go home with really fantastic brand new books. So the way it works is, and this is a through line in everything we do at Books Are Fun, is we're really bringing fun into books and reading. We're really gamifying reading. And so the program starts with a big launch party that's school-wide in the classroom, and it introduces sort of the adventure and the theme. So we have a different theme every single year. And then we send the kids on this adventure, and we send them home with what we call a treasure map, and they follow the steps with their parents. And along the way, they invite friends or family who might want to support them to grow their home libraries. And then every dollar contributed from friends or family goes towards their book list until they've earned all the books on their list. And then every dollar thereafter goes to support less fortunate students in their class to have books at home. So that's one of the really cool components, is you have kids helping other kids to have books. And then, so this goes on for a couple of weeks, and there are prizes and rewards for the kids. And it's really, really fun. We invite the entire school to participate and really go along with the theme. We're just ending the school year now, and the theme this past school year was sort of, it was a spy theme. It was kind of inspired by Mission Impossible a little bit. And it was really, really fun. We have a really fun new theme for the upcoming school year, but I think my head of marketing would probably, kill me if I mentioned it prematurely.
I was almost hoping like, oh, I'm going to find out what it is. I'm going to jump on it, but that's okay. I respect that.
I am the worst. I am like the perpetual bean spiller in the company. So I'm trying to bite my lip, but, yeah. So basically on book delivery day, on book celebration day, every student receives a package with their name on it, on their desk. And then they tear these books open like it's Christmas morning, like it's a present. And the joy and enthusiasm, the authentic joy and enthusiasm that you see on the faces of these kids when they tear into their books, and then they're talking to their friends. And this is the magic of the program, is it really starts to socialize reading, where books become social currency and become a topic of conversation. One of my favorite things that I hear from educators is, after Book Blast, it changed the conversation in the halls at the school. Instead of the kids talking about video games or something else, social media, whatever, they're talking about the books they're reading. And, the thing that got me hooked on reading as a kid, that sort of positive peer pressure, me wanting to be in the conversation with my older friends, this is what's happening when we run Book Blast at a school. Kids will be sitting at lunch talking about the new Diary of a Wimpy Kid that they're reading, and there's that reluctant reader who's sitting there alongside them, and now they have a copy of that book at home. There's nothing stopping them now from picking that up and reading it, so they can be part of the conversation. And we hear this constantly from the educators that we partner up with to implement these programs in schools.
I can attest to all of that because, like I said, when I first saw the program and thought it was too good to be true, and then we ran the program, all those things that you talked about 100% happened, from the launch party in the classrooms, building the kids' excitement that day, the kickoff, and like kids begging for their treasure maps to go home. And the steps that they have to do are so simple. It's basically 10 emails or text contacts of family and friends. They can get more than that if they want to, obviously. The more they contact people, the more chance they have of raising funds for books. But it's so easy. And I know you'll probably talk about some of the incentives that you do for the program as well, because that's a big piece of it. You got to dangle the carrot sometimes, I think, but it's still a good thing. But I don't know how many times I had kids asking me this year, when are the books coming in? When are our book blasts coming in? And they call it by name. They know the program by now. We're 4 years deep into it. We actually had it carry over to our elementary school this year. My building's primary, so just K1 this year, 2, 3, 4 in our elementary. And I said, you guys got to do this because your kids are going to expect it now. I mean, they've had it for all 3 years. And so we had both buildings doing it, had great participation. But again, the excitement and the engagement in when those books come, they see that pallet sitting in the hallway and they're like, that's it. The books are here. And it gives you goosebumps to see that much excitement for a book is amazing. And that's what we want kids to have. So kudos to you guys for something that really is pretty simple in all honesty. But it does so much for our kids. I don't know why every school in America is not taking advantage of this, and maybe at one point they will. But talk a little bit, maybe then, I mentioned the incentive piece. How does that work? And give some examples of things that we use or that you guys use to help kids get that treasure map turned in quickly.
Yeah. Incentives and rewards are really important, right? It's all part of gamification. And, I think human beings are wired to like games, and it just makes things fun. So we like to reward kids along the way as they participate in the program. Not only are they earning books, but we have some really fun rewards for them along the way. They get rewards just for completing their treasure map. And then there are drawing rewards that the kids get throughout the first week of the program. We have a reward that's actually for all participating families. We send one family per season to Disney. So we just try to build in, lots of fun just to keep it light and keep kids really motivated. It's kind of the spoonful of sugar, right? And it really builds an incredible amount of momentum around this program, and then centered around books and reading.
Yeah. And I kind of almost lost my train of thought of where I was going here, but just the way that you guys run the program, I will say from an administrator standpoint, is the easiest program I've ever ran. And, I'll compare it to a fundraiser because it runs very similar to a fundraiser where you're trying to earn money for your school, but it's different because we're not really trying to raise money for our school. We're raising money to buy books for our kids in our school. And hopefully I'm explaining that right. And stop me if I'm wrong, Ben, but I think a lot of people, even myself, when I first saw it, it's like, okay, this sounds like a fundraiser. Where's the money going? Why am I not getting the money? Because that's what principals are used to. Like, okay, we'll sell your product and we're going to get 50% of the profits back. That's awesome commission, but now to me, we're getting something that money can't buy, that engagement, that excitement about books, and actually putting books into kids' hands. Maybe explain, like, it's not a fundraiser. I mean, I would say it's not a fundraiser. What's the right term for it?
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head. This program, we kind of cheated a little bit. We worked with educators to build the program. So there were a couple things that we needed to be true. Number one, you touched on the ease of the program. We needed this program. We know how busy you guys are. How burdened you are with everything you're juggling, and a full calendar and everything. We did not want to add a big hefty lift in the middle of the school year. So we had to make this thing streamlined and super easy. And then we looked at, there are some fundraising programs out there that are really good at motivating kids and inspiring a lot of participation. So we looked at some of the elements from fundraising, like rewards and incentives and stuff like that. And, one of the complaints that we heard from some of the educators that that we were working with to build this program was, we run these fundraisers and then we only keep half the money.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to make sure that 100 cents of every dollar went towards the intended cause. So you're right in saying this isn't a fundraiser. This is, again, a community-funded literacy program where the beneficiary is the kids directly. So we're essentially just inviting the village to get involved, to invest in the future of these kids that they care so deeply for, and contribute dollars towards the purchase of books. If they were to go to a bookstore and go and buy books, it would be the exact same translation. In terms of, if I put down $10 at Barnes and Noble, it translates to this particular book. The same is true in Book Blast. So on top of that, we're offering all these rewards and incentives. There's no cost to the school. So that was another non-negotiable here. We know your budgets are tight. We know families' budgets are tight. So we didn't want this to be a burden for the parents either. And, about 95% of the dollars that come in as part of this program come from non-parents. So we're really able to mobilize the entire community to get behind this really singular focus of putting really high quality books that kids actually want to read in their hands to have as their very own at home. So, again, I think I mentioned at the start of the program, this is kind of a conspiracy between us and our partner educators and the publishers to load kids up with books and really make reading fun.
And like I said, I just can't talk enough good things about it. And I'm going to jump back a little bit from the administrator side because I run the program myself. I don't dish it off on teachers or secretary, mainly because when I first brought it to my building, I didn't want to put a burden on somebody if it was a lot of work. And I don't even know where to start. It's just so easy. Everything from communication with reps on setting up your program, the dates and the materials. I get daily emails that tell me exactly what to do. I get a digital file that has all of our documents, communications, social media posts. They're all done. All I have to do is go in and grab them and throw them up, on a Facebook page or a parent email. I copy and paste it and blast it out. It literally takes minutes a day, to do this program as an administrator or whoever's running it. And from start to finish, the communication is great. If there's ever an issue, all I have to do is shoot a text to my rep, and within minutes, she's right back at me with the answer to my problem. Never had a big issue with it. And literally after that first year, I can remember telling people, if you're not doing this, you're shame on you, because it is so easy. And it's just such a good way to put, again, books in hands of kids. I couldn't find a better program, an easier program out there anywhere to do the same thing that Book Blast does for my kids. So to me, it's been a no-brainer. And I'm trying to be the voice in Northeast Indiana now of, guys, you got to do this. And I know even our Indiana Association of School Principals highlighted, I think, Books Are Fun this last year at their state convention. And that was kind of cool to see, okay, this is catching on now in the state and people are taking advantage of this. But, you talked about it not being a fundraiser, but I will throw in there's incentives not only for the school, but for classroom teachers. So the more participation teachers have, they get to do these shopping sprees to buy things for their classroom. Me as a principal, I even earned some funds and I keep a treasure chest of, prizes and things when kids do good things. So I was able to kind of fill up my treasure chest this fall or this spring based on our participation and just the outpouring of support that our parents gave to Book Blast. So, we might not make money off of it, but I'm okay with that because there are still incentives for our classroom teachers to earn rewards that they can put right back into their classrooms and their kids. That's an awesome thing.
Yeah, we, our customer success team is made up almost entirely by former educators. And they wake up every morning trying to figure out, how do I best support my schools and how do I make this program as easy as possible? And our goals are, for an average size school, as schools get bigger, it becomes a little more time consuming, but just marginally so. So our goal is to deliver over 10,000 books to a school for basically 90 to 120 minutes of effort. And it's spread out over a couple weeks. So it's just like you've experienced, Brad. It's just a few minutes a day. And we try to take all the guesswork out of it. And, when we were putting the program together, one of the things we heard over and over again is, our teachers, they work so hard and they spend way too much money out of their own pockets on supplies for their classrooms. And I know that's not true at every school, but it's certainly true at a lot of schools. And so we wanted this program to also benefit the teachers and help make a dent in that personal spend so that they could have resources for their classroom in addition to, building the home libraries for their students.
Yeah, and it's fun to watch kind of the competitiveness that it brings to teachers and classrooms across grade levels and across the building. And it's a fun thing, don't get me wrong, because I'll announce each day what the participation is and which classroom, who has the highest participation. And it kind of just builds that momentum and that snowball effect of, there's a kid sitting in that seat across from the kid that's already got 10 emails and texts sent out. Kind of puts a little pressure on them, and they see them come back with the prizes that I handed out that day, and they're like, hey, I want to do that too. And it's such an easy thing for the kids and families to do. I tell families, like, literally 10 emails, 10 cell phone numbers, a combination of both. It's just jot it down, use mine if you want to, get your kid those prizes just by filling it out. And by chance, you're going to raise some money and help put books in our hands of our kids in our school. So it's a great thing. I just can't, again, I'm going to say it a lot tonight. I can't talk enough good about it. So talk a little bit about the age groups. Is this just an elementary level group that you hit, or what are the ages that we try to cover with Book Blast?
Yeah, so basically preschool through 8th grade. We have a robust preschool program, and we're working with hundreds of preschools around the country. I would say the sweet spot is probably like pre-K through 5th or 6th at the moment. And while we do serve middle schools, middle school kids, they have a different set of interests. Mm-hmm. And we're actually working on a middle school focused program as we speak. It'll probably take a little bit of iteration to get it right. We've been, just like we built the original Book Blast program, we've been teaming up with educators, getting a lot of feedback, and really figuring out how to tailor the program to appeal to middle school kids and make this really fun and engaging. And it's interesting, we like to debrief at the end of each season and talk with a lot of our sponsors and a lot of the parents and just get feedback. What's working? What's not working? What could we improve? One of the things we've heard is the friendly competition. Like if we could support that and emphasize that a little more with leaderboards and things like that. So we're working on that. But from a middle school standpoint, there are a few key tweaks that we can make that I think will really appeal to the middle school kids. So, right now I would say the sweet spot is really sort of preschool up through elementary school. And the program works just fine for middle school kids. But it can be improved. And, we're pretty early in our journey here and we just try to, make big strides of improvement season after season. So that it better serves the mission of getting kids excited about books.
Well, one thing that I really like too that we have taken advantage of in our building is, obviously every school has their share of students who are not at the same reading level as the kid sitting across the chair from them. Sometimes you have students with learning disabilities, and, we have these books kind of set by grade level for them to earn. But I love that you guys will also individualize that. Like if we, identify kids that like, hey, they're not reading at a 3rd grade level, so can we get them a 2nd grade set of books? You guys do that. And I think that's so important too, because again, we don't want kids to be struggling readers. We want to build the literacy skills. And if we can meet them where they're at, that's an awesome thing that you guys do as well.
Yeah, thanks. Again, that was inspired by the feedback that we got from parents and educators who have really helped in crafting a program to benefit kids and teachers. So, yeah, thanks for calling that out.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Talk a little bit then overall, like how do you go about as a company picking out books at those grade levels from year to year? Because they change. That's one thing I want people to know too. Like they're never the same set of grade level books from year to year. You know, I love how you switch it up, and there's so many books to choose from. How do you fall on those sets of books at each grade level each year?
Yeah, it's a collaboration between all the top publishers in the United States and also Europe, and our incredibly talented book procurement team, and then we have a panel of educators, and we collaborate with the panel of educators to say, what are you hearing? What's hot? What are the things that kids in first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade are really attracted to and want to read? And then we hear the trends that we're seeing from the publishers. We hear about the new books that are just releasing, and so on and so forth. And we take all of that, and then we have a very strict review process to make sure that the content in the book is not offensive. Wouldn't be interpreted as offensive to families, regardless of, their political affiliations or whatever. And so we really want books that are wholesome, that are universally appealing, and that are really fun for the kids. And then sort of the last step in the process, once we've sort of done those various layers of filtering and we have all the different candidates to go into the different book assortments, then we survey kids all across the country and we see what books really get them going, get them excited. So all of that sort of culminates into the books that you see in the packages that land on the kids' desks that they tear open. And we're constantly filtering in new books. So as Penguin Random House drops a great new title, we get it in as quickly as we can once it's gone through our process, and we'll substitute it into the lineup. So we always have the most exciting, appealing books for the kids at any given time.
I love it. And I'm going to reiterate again, we talked about it back at the beginning. I think one great thing about this program is that even the kids or the families that, for whatever reason can't participate, don't want to participate, still get books. And that's the great thing. And I love, like, this year we had such success. I had the option of either putting more books into the hands of the kids that were raising the money versus the kids that weren't. And I went the other direction. I said, I want the kids who aren't able to participate to get more books. I think this year they walked away with like 3 books in my building, which was the most they've ever walked away with. And you always have the haves and the have-nots, and I feel like we've got to really support the have-nots sometimes. So if I can put an extra book in their hands, we're going to do it. And we were able to get some in our library too. Like, we had a couple sets of books for our library, which is such a huge thing, and they're so appreciative of that. There's so many components to this program of ways to put books in kids' hands, not just the kids that are raising, the funds. So that's an amazing, amazing thing. Let's talk impact a little bit about the program overall. Maybe share some examples of some impacts that you've seen or heard about through Book Blast for those kids that just are reluctant readers. Like, we kind of hit on it a little bit through this program so far, but what impact are you seeing on kids that maybe aren't, kids that love to read books?
Yeah, that's the thing that gets me up in the morning. Those are the kids where we just love hearing stories about sort of the light bulb going off and us igniting a love of reading for those kids. And we hear it constantly from the educators that we partner with and the schools that we partner with about, these kids that they would never see reading a book. It was like pulling teeth. And somehow along the way, and it's really through that sort of that dynamic of the socialization, the excitement around reading, the momentum that's built on that book celebration day when all the kids are ripping their books open. And this kid gets books that are really tailored to their reading level. They're books that are really appealing and interesting. And they're books that, like, their friends are reading. So now they start picking those books up, and it becomes something that's social. And so, I can't tell you how often we hear about kids, whether it's from the parents who are really grateful for the impact this is having on their kids, or from their teachers, just saying like this really, awoke something like a love of reading in this kid that was really reluctant about it. And it makes sense why kids are reluctant about reading. At first, reading's really hard.
Yes.
And it's not very much fun to do something that's really hard and that you're struggling with. And so that's the hump that we're trying to support our educators, to help kids get over. And we do it with all of this enthusiasm around books and reading and through access and all of that. I think the work you do, Brad, and all the educators on your team, I mean, it's really like, it's so fundamental to society. Like, I think education is the cornerstone of society. You look at countries that put resources into education and they thrive. It's like the biggest indicator of abundance and success in a society. And it's true on a micro level when you look at communities that have great education and they put the resources behind it and they have people like you who are just so dedicated and focused on educating youth. It just builds such a strong culture in the world. And I think literacy is really the bedrock of education. And so if you can make reading fun and you can help kids get over that hump, then reading becomes something that's like enjoyable that kids will do in their spare time. And when reading becomes easy, school becomes easy.
I would agree 100% with that.
Right? So, it's like, it's not rocket science. There's so much research out there. I think the number one predictor of success in school is reading at or above grade level by third grade. And I think it's probably the science that's behind the initiative in Indiana to make sure kids at third grade are reading at or above grade level. And I think it's really, really smart what you guys are doing in your state. And then, once kids are reading at or above grade level, the outcomes just sort of start rolling downhill. They start building momentum in school. They start doing their homework more. They have better grades, and they start to really enjoy being in school.
100%. Are there any success stories, maybe from schools that have done Book Blast or students that have been involved in Book Blast that have been shared with you that maybe you want to share here today? Like, does any one, instance stand out to you that maybe has been shared with you over the years of Book Blast?
Yeah, there was this mother that we interviewed, and she got so emotional about it, and it makes me emotional. Like, I'm getting emotional just like recounting the story. She just talked about how important reading is in her household, but how she had really struggled with one of her kids. She had 3 kids. 2 of them were voracious readers. And there was this one, and she just could not get him to read. And he came home with his Book Blast books. And he sat in his room for a few hours and just tore through his books. And she said she had never seen anything like it. He devoured 5 books in one night.
Wow.
And it was like, she said that it just like really sparked something that she had been trying to achieve for years. And all of a sudden he had this great enthusiasm around reading. I should probably follow up with her to see if he's still reading as much, but it was just such a breakthrough moment. And that one really sticks with me.
Well, and again, we're trying to build home literacy with these kids, and building those home libraries. And I probably take it for granted being an educator. I'm sitting in what was our toy room when our girls were little, looking at a shelf in front of me that has books on it, and we have boxes of books that either we bought or like when people would say, what do the girls want for their birthday? Hey, let's get them some books. And we just had books at our availability all the time for our girls. But I know today there's a lot of households that don't do that. Why do you think that is? Like, do you think that's part of the digital age we're in, that you can read online? Like, my wife's an avid online reader. She can fly through books. I'm more of I got to hold that book. I want to turn the page. I want to smell the pages. But why do you think the lack of home literacy, or the access to books in a home, is such a big issue today?
Yeah, I think it's the confluence of a few factors. It's very cultural. Um, so like we're living in a culture that's been technologized, and we're engaging with technology is a very new thing. We're trying to figure out how to do it in a healthy way. And there's all this research coming out on the benefits of reading physical books. It's this mounting body of research. And if you read any of the work of like Jonathan Haidt, he put out a book called The Anxious Generation. Having alternatives to screen time is so important for the healthy development of our kids. I think it's a few things. Families that don't read and don't value reading, there tends to be this sort of perpetuation of those values of not putting emphasis on books and reading. There's a resource issue. When you look at low-income families, 61% of low-income families in the United States have zero age-appropriate books in their homes for their kids. So you have these like book deserts out there. And, one of the non-negotiables for us as we were putting this program together is, no matter what the economics were of a particular school, we would never say no to working with that school. And I come up against this all the time. We talk to schools in economically depressed communities, and they just say, oh, our parents aren't going to get involved, or, the community doesn't have any money, nothing's going to happen from this. And we say, that's okay. We're here to make sure all your kids get books. We're guaranteeing that no matter what happens. And I'm really excited actually right now because we recently started a partnership with a foundation called the Imagination Foundation. And their goal is to level the playing field for kids in economically depressed communities to make sure that they have the same access to books as other kids in more affluent communities. And so when we go into Title I schools, what we're trying to build towards is that the foundation would be able to provide matching funds to really help level the playing field for kids in communities that are economically challenged. So I think that's one of the components, is just sort of this like the resources, the access. But it's going to take a village to fix this, and it starts in the home, and it's really important. All the work you guys are doing within the walls of the schools. But one of the things we heard when we got this program going was the importance of reading. I was talking to this like really frustrated teacher, and she was like, I can only do so much while I have the kids in the classroom. And the magic of reading is that it allows kids to continue to grow and learn and develop beyond the walls of the school. Mm-hmm. And that's really, what this is all about, is sending these books home with the kids and helping, further their education and their development in a way that's really fun. And, for me, I try to read a book a week, and it's like my favorite activity. And I think as you culture that in yourself, and as you build the habit of reading, it just becomes one of the most enjoyable things you can do.
That's awesome. And you guys are killing it. You really are. And that's kind of when I want to take the conversation next. How does a school, if there's a principal listening to this week's podcast and they're like, hey, I want to try this, how do they start? How do they get a hold of Book Blast? Like I was lucky enough that somebody came to me, but if there's a school out there listening right now that wants to get involved with Book Blast next year, what do they need to do?
Well, Brad, I want to commend you for being an early adopter of the program, and thank you for, being so supportive of the work we're trying to do here. I'm so tempted to offer up one of my colleagues' email addresses, but that wouldn't be very nice. So somebody interested could email us at bbsupport@booksaarefun.com. So that's BBSUPPORT at books, BOOKSRARE fun.com. Alternatively, they could go to our website, booksaarefun.com/contact, and they could reach out that way.
Awesome. And I'll be sure to put those links in the descriptions when we post this podcast on our social media pages so people can just click on those and get a hold of you if they need to, because I want to make it easy as it has been for me to get a hold of you guys so they can reach out and get started. And like I said, I'm hoping my voice will, even if it gets one principal, one school to say, hey, I want to find out more about this, then I think today's a win. What would you say to those buildings or maybe a principal that's listening that would be a little hesitant, like me, like I was at first? I was a little hesitant, but then I just thought, let's try it. What would you say to them to kind of win them over and pull them over to try Book Blast for a year?
Yeah. Well, there's really you're not risking much. The number one objection we get is this sounds too good to be true. And I have enough friends that are principals who get bombarded with different companies offering different things, promising different stuff. And just the amount of times that they fall short on those promises is pretty significant. So there's a lot of healthy skepticism out there. I would just say, we've tried to make this the easiest yes that you can make during the school year. We do 90% of the work, so you don't have to. This is going to take you, 90 minutes to maybe 120 minutes to implement. And in exchange for that, you're going to get, call it $10,000 worth of books, give or take, for all your kids. It's a totally inclusive program. Every kid gets to participate, and every student is guaranteed to be going home with a package of new books. And there's really no risk. Again, we try to make this easy. There's no cost. There's no pressure on parents to participate. Again, like you said, if a parent doesn't want to participate, they don't have to. But guess what? Their kid is still going to go home with new books. And it's just a really great way to bring the entire community together to support the kids. And I think that's one of the things that's really great about the program is the impression it leaves on the kids. Like the message it gives them is you are important. I see you. I believe in you. And I'm putting my money where my mouth is to support you with these books. And it's a pretty cool thing. So I would just implore any educator. I've yet to speak to an educator who doesn't value reading, and this is a really good way to build momentum around reading at your school and to help inspire a bunch of lifelong readers.
Well, if you ever need a proponent and you have those naysayers out there, you can give them my email, my phone number. You have that now. I would be glad to tell people all the great things and the experiences I've had with Book Blast, because it's an amazing program. It's an easy program to run, and I'm going to continue it as long as I can. So we're at a segment now, Ben, because we're winding down, but I always like to do some rapid fire questions. These are more like rapid fire statements. So I'm going to say a statement. Give me your 5-10 second response, just right off the top of your dome, and then we'll move to the next one. Okay?
Sounds good. I'll try to be quick.
Here we go. Book Blast is just another fundraiser.
That's not quite right. In the sense that it's not a fundraiser at all. And, it's really a, community funded literacy program where, we're building home libraries. It's very different from a traditional fundraiser.
Statement number 2. Kids don't enjoy reading anymore.
I guess if you read the news, you could come to that conclusion. But if you put great books in kids' hands and you celebrate reading, both at home and at school, I have seen quite the opposite. And the amount of joy and authentic enthusiasm the kids have when they get a great brand new book is pretty inspiring.
Absolutely. Families are just too busy to engage in a program like Book Blast.
We try to make it really easy. It's about 7 minutes of a family's time in order to engage in Book Blast and support their kid to have books, but not just their kid, but their kids' friends. And it's that positive peer pressure that's going to help build those positive habits around reading. So, I guess it's all priorities, but, I would encourage families to take 7 minutes to help foster really good reading habits for their kids.
Great answer. All right, we got two more. Here's the next one. Digital reading has replaced physical books.
That's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a huge wave of momentum supporting physical books. It's an incredible alternative to screen time. I think more and more parents and educators are waking up to the importance of creating a little more balance and having kids off of screens and getting outside and playing is super important. Reading physical paper books is also super important. And it's not just my opinion. There is a ton of research behind it. Not what I'm seeing out there. I think there's a major turning of the tide that we're in the midst of.
I would agree. And side note, I'm even seeing it like the push for, one-to-one tablets and iPads and Chromebooks in schools is slowly starting to shift back to what I would call paper and pencil. So, I'm a very big proponent of that, especially at the elementary, middle school, high school. I think technology is a very useful tool, and I think it's a useful tool in the hands of elementary kids at certain points of the day, but to send these tablets home and expect them to do virtual learning when we close down, when we get 6 inches of snow. I mean, we could do a whole podcast episode just on Brad's beliefs about that. And so I digress. But one last rapid fire statement for you. One book can change a child's life.
It changed my life.
I knew you were going to say that. Keep going.
Yeah. and that's the thing that inspires us every day. We've built such a strong culture at this company. I just feel so blessed to have such dedicated people who really care about this mission and this cause. And, it's the stories of the kids who get a book from Books Are Fun and it changes their life and it sparks that lifelong love of reading. So never was a truer statement uttered.
Love it. Love it. All right, my friend, we're winding down as we kind of bring this episode to a close. First off, I want to thank you. This has been such a great episode and great information. And like I said earlier, I hope it's inspired some educators out there to jump on the Book Blast wagon because it's a great, great program. But as we close down, what's one message that you want every parent or educator listening to go home with today?
That is a great question. I think the most important thing that a parent or an educator can do for a kid is to truly listen and take the time to understand that kid and connect to that kid and love that kid. And I think that's sort of at the center of that same principle is at the center of inspiring a joy of reading, is taking the time to really understand that particular student or that particular child, understand what their interests are, understand what book is going to light them up. And so from that place of love and patience and listening, that's the underlying sort of approach to get kids hooked on reading.
Awesome. Well, Ben, I thank you again for joining me today. And again, shout out to Heather Vance. She's my representative for Book Blast. And yeah, I told her I'd do this podcast. I even gave her one of my shirts. You'll be getting one too, my friend. And she said, we need to get Ben on here. I think this would be a great episode. I said, let's do this. And I think this has been a great episode. And it's been a great episode to wind down season 2 of Interventions and Detentions. So thank you, Ben Kaplan, for joining me today. Great information. And I hope we get, at least 1 or 2 schools to reach out and say, hey, I want to know more about Book Blast. What can I do? So I encourage all of our schools that are listening. I'm going to blast this on our social media pages. Big shout outs for Book Blast program. It's a great thing to do for kids. So Ben, thanks again for joining me. Any last words or thoughts?
My VP of marketing would want me to say that We are working on some really fun home products beyond just Book Blast. We're taking the same sort of, I guess, principles around gamifying reading and making it really fun. And so, we have a bunch of initiatives on the horizon that are going to be really exciting. And so this is a plug for her. Her name's Jen Nelson, and she's absolutely brilliant. She's working really hard on these projects. So I just wanted to get that out there.
I'm glad that you did. That's exciting. I can't wait to hear a little bit more about that too. So awesome. Thanks for sharing that and give us a little bit of, something to chew on there and think about what's coming next for Book Blast and the next spinoff. So thanks again, Ben, for coming on and joining us today. Listeners, it's been a great season. Thanks for tuning in to Interventions and Detentions. This is going to be the final episode for season 2. Brad's taking some time off because August is going to be here quick enough. And once August returns, we'll be back with season 3 with new guests, new topics, but just more of Interventions and Detentions. So tune in Friday mornings at 8. In the meantime, after this episode, go back and check out season 1, season 2. You'll find them on pretty much every podcast platform that you can. So tune in, check us out, enjoy the rest of your summer because I'll be back soon. It's Interventions and Detentions where the real learning begins.